Episode 1, The First Bell. I was told the chapel's bell hadn't rung in 50 years, but that night, at exactly midnight, it did. It wasn't a gentle chime. It was sharp, metallic, and heavy, like it was striking straight into the bones of the earth. I Saturday up in bed, heart hammering, staring out the window of the rectory. The chapel stood in the distance, its crooked tower silhouetted against the pale moon, and yet no one was there. By morning, half the village had gathered at the chapel steps, murmuring the same phrase in trembling voices. The bell has chosen. I laughed at first. I was a man of faith, not superstition. A bell cannot choose, I told them. But then, I saw her. Mrs. Alara Kent, the oldest woman in the village, was sitting alone in the front pew, her wrinkled hands clenched so tightly around a rosary that blood ran between her fingers. Her eyes, God help me, were fixed on the bell tower as if she were waiting for it. That night, she died in her sleep. I tried to explain it away. Age, weakness, coincidence. But when I gave her last rites, I noticed something carved faintly into the wood of her coffin. A small mark shaped like a bell. I asked who did it. No one answered. The second night, I stayed awake. I told myself I was only watching over the chapel, but really, I was waiting. Midnight came. And for one quiet, terrible moment, I thought it was over. And then the bell rang again. The sound was worse this time, a deeper, a lower, like it wasn't just metal striking metal, but bone striking bone. I ran out of the rectory, stormed through the cold mist, and shoved open the chapel doors. Empty, the pews were bare, the altar untouched. Yet, above me, the bell ropes moved, not from the wind, they were being pulled. I climbed the narrow, wooden stairs of the tower, every step groaning under my weight. And there, in the shadows, I saw it. A hand, just a hand, pale and thin, clutching the rope and ringing the bell with unnatural strength. The rest of the body was swallowed in darkness. I frowned. I wanted to shout, to demand its name, but before I could speak, it stopped. The bell rope hung still. The shadow was gone. The next morning, the village was silent. No laughter. No footsteps, only the sound of a single scream from the east end of town. Another death. And this time, I didn't laugh, because now I knew the truth. The bell did not ring for the living. It rang for those already marked. And tonight, it will ring again. Episode 2, The Curse of the Chapel. They buried Alara Kent at dawn. By sunset, that chapel was full again. Not with mourners. No one dared step inside it with whispers. The bell doesn't just warn of death. Old Harlan muttered outside the tavern. It brings it. I dismissed it as fear. Yet that night, as I locked the chapel doors, I noticed something carved into the wooden frame. A single line, etched deep by a trembling hand. Do not answer when it rings. I didn't sleep. Midnight came, and I Saturday in the rectory, staring at the chapel, my hand clenched around a Bible that suddenly felt a light to protect me. And then a Camoth bell, not one strike this time. 3. Each one slower, heavier, as though the earth itself was groaning. The sound didn't just echo. It crawled through the village, slipping under doors, rattling glass. I swore I heard it inside my own chest. I grabbed my lantern and went out. The village was dead silent. No lights in the windows, no dogs barking. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. As I reached the chapel steps, I saw the door was ajar. I hadn't left it that way. Inside, the pews were empty, except for one. A man I didn't recognize Saturday there, soaked to the bone, his face hidden beneath a dripping hood. He was humming low, broken notes that didn't sound human. Are you lost? I asked. My voice cracked. He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted his head, and I saw his face, or what was left of it. The skin was pale, stretched thin, and his eyes were gone, replaced by the dark hollows that seemed to swallow the lantern light. Then he smiled. The bell knows you now, Father. He rasped. His voice was dry earth, a grave splitting open. You've heard it twice. It will come for you, as it came for me. I stumbled back. Who are you? His smile widened, and then he vanished. No sound, no movement. One moment he was there, the next only the pew remained, what with rainwater that hadn't come from outside. I didn't remember leaving. I only remember standing in the middle of the road, lantern shaking in my hand, while the bell rang one final time. Softer now, almost gentle, like it was mocking me. By morning, another death. The blacksmith this time, found in his workshop with his head bowed against the anvil, a bell carved into his palm. I stared at it until the truth burned into me. This wasn't a warning, this was a summons, and I had already been called. Episode 3, The Boy Who Heard It Twice. The first time the bell rang for him, no one believed it. The second time, we all wished it hadn't. His name was Samuel, 10 years old, quiet, the kind of boy who hid behind his mother's skirts during Mass. But on the night of the second toll, he stood in the chapel doorway alone, barefoot, staring up at the bell tower as if it were calling only to him. I was there. I saw his lips moving, not in prayer, but in answer. When I tried to speak to him, he didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the rope that hung above, swaying slightly even though there was no wind. I put my hand on his shoulder. He flinched as if my touch burned him. The bell, he whispered. It wants me to listen again. I took him home, forced myself to assure his mother it was just a dream. But at midnight, the bell rang for the second time. 2 strikes. Lo, final. I ran to the chapel. The doors were shut this time, locked from the inside. I pounded on them until my fist bled, but no one answered. Then I heard it soft, rhythmic tapping from within, like fingernails scratching wood. When I finally broke in, the chapel was empty, except for Samuel. He was sitting in the front pew, eyes wide, mouth open, drawing on the floor with a piece of chalk he must have found. Bells, down scenes of them, each one darker than the last, smeared until the chalk looked more like ash. I knelt down. Samuel, what are you doing? He didn't blink, didn't look at me, just kept drawing. Then, in a voice far too calm for a child, he said, "It's teaching me." My stomach turned cold. What is? The one in the tower. I looked up. The bell rope was still swinging, though no one touched it. I carried Samuel out of there that night. He didn't resist, but he didn't speak either. By morning, his mother screamed so loud the whole village came running. Samuel was alive, breathing, but silent. His lips were sealed tight as if stitched by invisible hands, and when they pried open his little palms, they found them stained with black. Not chalk, not ink, soot, the kind that only comes from the bell tower. And Samuel had not been anywhere near it. Episode 4, Confession in the Dark. It was nearly midnight when I heard the knock. 3 slow raps on the chapel door. No one came to confess at that hour. No one dared even walk near the chapel after the bell. Yet when I opened the door, a man stood there tall, hunched, his face hidden beneath the hood of a soaked coat. He didn't speak. He only raised a trembling hand and pointed toward the confessional. I should have sent him away, but I didn't. We sat there in silence, the wooden partition between us creaking in the cold. Then he spoke, his voice low and uneven. "Father, I heard the bell. My breath caught. I waited for him to go on, but his next words clawed through the darkness like nails on stone. And I think it rang because of me." I swallowed hard. "Why do you say that?" "My son," the man laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Because I killed her. I buried her where no one would find her. And the bell, it won't stop ringing for me." The air in the confessional turned heavy, suffocating. "Who did you kill?" I asked, my voice barely holding. "My wife," he whispered. And then, with a strange satisfaction, "But it doesn't matter. The bell already told me my turn is next." The wooden wall between us shuddered suddenly, as if something pressed against it from his side. I leaned back, clutching my crucifix. "Father," he rasped, "you don't understand. It doesn't just warn, it comes." Last night I saw it in my room, a shadow with no face, holding the rope. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, the chapel bell rang. Once, deep, final. I frowned. See, he laughed again, a sickening sound that didn't sound human anymore. "It's here," he said. "It's coming down the aisle." I shot up, opened the door of the confessional empty. The man was gone. The booth smelled of wet earth and candle wax. And then I saw it, on the wall where he had been sitting, carved deep into the wood by an unseen hand. One more. By dawn, they found him hanging from the bell rope, head tilted toward the door, lips curled in a silent grin, and I realized something that hollowed me out like a grave. Confession wouldn't save us. Not here, because in this village, the bell was gone now. Episode 5, The Priest Dream. I woke up with blood on my hands. Not a dream, not a metaphor. Actual blood, dark and sticky, smeared across my palms as if I'd been digging in the earth. The strangest part, it didn't frighten me, not right away, because I'd seen it before only in my sleep. The first dream came the night after the murderer's confession. I was standing in the chapel, barefoot, the stone floor cold as ice. Above me, the bell swung by itself, slow and heavy, each toe shaking the air like thunder. Then I looked down and realized I was holding the rope. My hands blistered, my skin tore, but I didn't let go. Every time the bell rang, I felt something slip free from the world, a thread snapping in the dark. I knew, without anyone telling me, that I wasn't just ringing for the dead. I was calling them, and they came. Figures crawled from the shadows of the pews, faces hidden, heads bowed, moving in silence until they circled the altar. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all staring at me as if I had summoned them. One of them finally raised his head. It was Alara Kent. Her lips didn't move, but I heard her voice in my skull. "You're learning, Father. It's almost your turn." I woke up screaming. I told myself it was only a nightmare, but when I looked down, my hands were raw, torn at the palms as if I'd been clutching rope in my sleep. And last night it happened again. This time, I was in the bell tower. The sky outside was nothing but black. No stars, no moon. The bell rope was slick with blood, and I was pulling it harder than before. Each toll echoed like a command. Below, in the chapel, the pews were full again, not with the living, not even with the dead. They were empty skins, hollow faces stretched and overbone, and they were smiling. One of them stepped forward, a boy, Samuel. He tilted his head at me, his stitched lips barely parting as a whisper slid out. We knit louder. I woke drenched in sweat, heart hammering, and found my hands stained in blood again. I washed them until my skin burned, but the red never fully left. Now I sit in this rectory, staring at the bell tower, and I can feel it. The rope is waiting for me, and God help me, part of me wants to answer. Episode 6, The Dead Who Answered. The bell rang again last night, but this time, it wasn't the only sound. At first, it was faint like a murmur carried on the wind. I thought it was the creak of the old chapel walls or the restless trees outside. But then it grew louder, clearer, voices, dozens of them. I grabbed my lantern and rushed out into the cold. The village was silent as a grave, but that chapel glowed faintly, as if lit from within by a fire no one could see. And then I saw them, shadows gathered at the steps of the chapel, not standing, not moving, just waiting. Their shapes were wrong, blurred, like candle smoke trapped in the shape of a person. One of them turned, even from a distance. I knew her face. Alara Kent. "Father," she whispered, though her lips didn't move. The sound slid into my skull like a knife. The bell calls for more. I stepped back, heart hammering, clutching my crucifix so tightly it left marks in my hand. "You're dead," I said. Her head tilted. The others began to sway, like a congregation without bones. "We're not gone," she hissed. "We only answer now." And then I heard it, my name. One of the shadows broke from the group. It was small, hunched, a child. Samuel. His stitched lips hadn't healed, his hollow eyes fixed on me, and I swear I saw him smile without moving his mouth. "Father." I dropped the lantern. Its light shattered, but the chapel didn't go dark. The shadows were glowing now, faintly, like embers. The bell rang again. This time, the voices didn't just call out, they screamed. 1,000 names, 1,000 pleas, echoing through the night air. Some begged for salvation, others left. I couldn't run. My legs locked. The door of the chapel creaked open by itself, and for one breathless moment, every shadow turned toward it like obedient dogs. Then, in perfect unison, they whispered a single word that froze in my blood. "Enter." I stumbled back, gasping for air, but the door slammed shut. The bell fell silent. The shadows gone. The village woke to another body this morning. The blacksmith's apprentice, found kneeling in the chapel aisle, eyes open, lips carved with the shape of a bell. And tonight, I know the voices will call again, but what terrifies me most is that part of me wants to listen. Episode 7, The Forbidden Psalm. This morning, I found a Bible in the chapel that shouldn't exist. It was hidden beneath the altar, bound in leather so old it cracked at my touch. The pages were yellowed, fragile, but one section had been marked with dry wax, as if someone wanted to keep it sealed forever. I pried it open. The writing was in Latin, scrawled by a hand that shook, but even before I translated, I felt an unease that crawled under my skin like frost. The heading read, Psalm 13, the toll of the dead. I read it once, then twice, and every time, I wished I hadn't. When the bell calls, do not pray, for prayer feeds the rope, and when the rope is full, the dead will walk. Do not kneel, do not bow, and if you hear your name, do not answer. My hands trembled. I almost slammed the book shut, but then I saw something else in annotation in the margin. Written in English this time, in a priest's careful script. Burn this page. Never let it be read. The bell is not his. I didn't burn it. I don't know why. That night, I stayed in the chapel, Bible clutched to my chest like a shield. When the bell rang, I didn't pray. I held my breath and waited. And then, it happened. The air thickened. Candles went out one by one, though no one touched them. And in the silence that followed, I heard it. A voice, clear as glass, whispering my name from the rafters. Father. I looked up. The rope was moving. No one was there. And yet, with every sway, I saw something fingers, not human ones, blackened, thin as twigs, clutching the rope and pulling it tighter. I slammed the Bible shut and shouted, I will not answer you. That chapel shuddered. The pews groaned. And then, like a mockery, the voice spoke again, not once, but a dozen times, overlapping, a chorus of the dead. Then we will come down. I ran. I didn't stop until the sun came up, but when I returned, the Bible was gone. In its place, carved deep into the altar wood, were the words I had read the night before, do not pray. And I realized something dreadful. This wasn't just a warning, it was a rule, and I had already broken it. Episode 8, The Second Death. She was dead for 3 minutes. Mara Linton, a seamstress, quiet, devout, the kind of woman who never missed a single mass. They said her heart simply stopped in the middle of the night, but the doctor revived her. When she opened her eyes, she didn't scream, she didn't cry, she only whispered, I heard the bell. I went to see her the next morning. Her house was dark, curtains drawn tight as if she feared the sunlight itself. Mara Saturday in her chair, pale and trembling, clutching a rosary so hard the beads had cut into her palms. They ran it for me, she said. I saw them, dead. They were standing at the edge of the dark, waiting, and one of them smiled. I told her it was a nightmare. I wanted to believe it myself. But at midnight, the bell rang once, and Mara began to scream. Her neighbors heard her. They swore her voice didn't sound human, that it carried through the entire village like a warning no one wanted to hear. I ran from the rectory, my lantern swinging wildly in my hand, and reached her house just in time to see the door slam shut by itself. Inside, everything was still, too still. Mara, no answer. I pushed the door open and found her standing in the center of the room, facing the wall, her head tilted as if listening to something I couldn't hear. The rosary was gone. Mara, come with me, I begged. She turned. Her eyes were black, not empty, full, filled with something that looked back at me and recognized me. It's beautiful, she whispered, when you hear it from the other side. Before I could move, she walked past me, out the door, barefoot, straight toward the chapel. I followed. God help me. I followed her all the way to the bell tower. She climbed the steps as if in a trance. I shouted her name, but she never turned around. And when she reached the top, she placed her hands on the rope and smiled. The bell rang once, then she stepped off the edge. I didn't sleep that night. None of us did. When we found her body at dawn, it wasn't broken. She was kneeling, head bowed as if in prayer, and carved into her chest was the mark of a bell. And I swear just before the sun rose I heard it again. A second toll for her, because Mara Linton hadn't died once. She died twice. Episode 9, The Bell Ringer. I used to believe the bell rang by itself. I was wrong. It was just past midnight when I decided I had to see it for myself. I climbed the spiral staircase of the chapel tower, lantern in hand, every step creaking under my weight. The higher I went, the colder it became, until my breath hung in the air like smoke. Then I heard it. The rope was moving. Low, deliberate pulls, as if unseen hands gripped it tight. but the bell hadn't rung yet. It was waiting. I pressed my back against the wall and held my breath. That's when I saw him. A figure emerged from the shadows at the top of the stairs. Tall, thin, its black robes hung in tatters, swaying though there was no wind. I couldn't see its physically a hollow void where it should have been. It didn't walk. It glided. When it reached the rope, it stopped, lifted its head as if listening to something I could not hear, and then it pulled. The bell rang. The sound wasn't just loud. It was alive. The air itself seemed to shudder, and somewhere below, I swore I heard whispers answering the told hundreds of voices, layered one over the other, like a choir of the damned. The figure turned. Though it had no eyes, I felt it looking at me. My lantern flickered, and for one horrifying second, its light illuminated the thing's hands. They weren't hands at all. They were bones, and burned into the bone was the shape of a bell. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but then it spoken it aloud. But inside my skull, every word vibrating through my teeth. Soon, Father, your hands will know the rope. And then it vanished. The bell rope swung wildly. Though nothing held it now, I stumbled down the stairs, nearly falling, and when I reached the chapel floor, the pews were full, not with the living. They sat in silence. Pale faces turned to the altar, their mouths moving soundlessly. I didn't stay long enough to see if they noticed me. At dawn, the tower was empty again. No figure, no congregation, only the rope, still swaying, as if laughing at me. And I knew then the bell ringer wasn't a ghost. It was a herald, and it was waiting for me. Episode 10, The Last Mass. I thought a holy mass might say thus. I was wrong. I rang the chapel bell at noon, not midnight, praying the daylight would drown out whatever curse clung to it. The villagers came hesitant, pale, clutching their rosaries like shields. For the first time in weeks, the pews were full. I stood at the altar, Bible in hand, and told myself this would be the day we reclaimed the chapel. But the moment I began to speak, the candles died. One by one, their flames snuffed out, until only the cold glow of sunlight through the stained glass remained. I frowned, the words choking in my throat. Then came the sound. The bell, it rang from above beyond. Twice, then 7 times in a row. Each toll felt heavier than the last, shaking the floor beneath us. The villagers clamped their hands over their ears. But it didn't matter. The sound wasn't just heard, it was felt. And then the door slammed shut. I ran to them, but they wouldn't budge. Behind me, the congregation began to weep. I turned just in time to see the first shadow. It stood in the aisle, tall and still, its head bowed as if in prayer. Then another appeared, and another, until the entire chapel was crawling with them, silent, faceless shapes that moved with the rhythm of the bell. One of the villagers screamed. The shadow nearest to her turned, and without touching her, it pressed her to the floor. When it lifted its hand, she was gone, vanished. The pews erupted in panic. People shoved, cried, clawed at the walls, but there was no escape. And above it all, the bell rang again 7 more times. 7 shadows moved. 7 people disappeared. I clung to the altar, shouting prayers so loudly my throat tore. But the words felt hollow. They didn't fight the darkness. They only fed it. I understood then what the forbidden psalm meant. Prayer feeds the rope. The shadows turned toward me. I don't remember running. I don't even remember leaving the chapel. I only remember standing outside in the sunlight hours later, my body trembling, the doors locked tight behind me. Inside, it was silent. No screams, no movement, just the faint sound of the bell ringing once more, 7 times. Not for them, for me. Episode 11, The Angel Without Eyes. The morning after the last mass, I found the chapel doors wide open. Inside, it was silent. No bodies, no blood, no sign that 7 souls had been taken the night before. Only the faint smell of burnt wax and old stone lingered in the air. And then I saw it, the painting above the altar, an image of Saint Gabriel. The messenger on Galilee changed. His eyes were gone, not scratched out, not faded, simply absent. 2 smooth patches of blank canvas stared back at me where his gaze should have been. I stood frowning in the aisle. No, I whispered. No, this isn't possible. But as I spoke, I heard something, a faint rustling, like parchment scraping over stone. I turned. My eyes, they were on the floor, two perfect shapes, painted not in oil but in something darker, thicker, almost like blood. They stared up at me from the tiles, and though they were only paint, I felt them move. Why? I whispered, clutching my crucifix so tightly the metal cut into my skin. And then, for the first time, I heard the angel's voice. It didn't come from the painting. It came from the bell tower. You let it ring. The sound was neither human nor holy. It was hollow, sharp, like metal dragged across bone. I tried to stop it. I said, trembling, you prayed, and every prayer fed the rope. I stumbled back, heart hammering. Tell me how to end it. Silence. Then, a low, mournful toll of the bell. I looked up. The rope was swaying on its own again, but this time, something hung from it. A figure, pale, weightless, its head tilted unnaturally as it dangled, and where its face should have been, there was only the painting of Gabriel Ilis. Grinning, I ran. I didn't look back until I reached the door, and just before I left, I saw the pews. They weren't empty anymore. Every seat was filled with the missing villagers. They were sitting perfectly still, heads bowed in mock prayer, and every one of them had no eyes. And then, in the dark, 100 mouths whispered in unison. One toll left. Father. Episode 12, the final toll. The bell has been silent for 3 nights. No whispers, no shadows, no screams, and that terrifies me more than anything. I know it's waiting. The chapel feels heavier now, like the air itself is holding its breath. Every time I walk past it, I swear I hear chains dragging across the floor above, where the bell tower looms. Tonight, I can't bear it anymore. I light a lantern, clutch my crucifix, and step inside. The pews are full again. They're not moving, not breathing, but I know they're watching. The eyeless villagers sit in perfect silence, their heads tilted toward the altar as if in mock devotion. At the far end of the room, the painting of Saint Gabriel remains, and now, his mouth is gone too. I climb the tower. Each step feels longer than the last, as if I'm being dragged upward by something unseen. And then I see it, the bell rope. It's no longer frayed, no longer old. It's smooth, blackened, and pulsing faintly like a living thing. And standing beside it is the bell ringer. He doesn't move. He doesn't need to. I can feel his gaze empty and endless burrowing into me. It's time. Father, the voice hisses inside my head. One toll left. I raise my crucifix, but it feels like holding a feather against a storm. Why me? I whisper. The bell ringer tilts his head. Because you stayed. And then, without touching the rope, he pulls it. The bell tolls once, but this time, the sound isn't confined to the chapel. It rolls through the earth, the sky, the bones of every soul still breathing in this cursed village. The pews below creak. One by one, the eyeless congregation rises. They turn toward me and smile. The bell tolls again. The tower trembles. Shadows climb the walls like black water, swallowing the light from my lantern. I can hear names, no hundreds of them name among them. Stop! I scream, but my voice is swallowed by the sound. The third toll. The world splits. I see its rope unraveling, not in the tower, but through the air, down into the ground, into the graves below. Hands skeletal, rotting, countless reach for it, and they pull. The bell tolls a 4th time. This is no longer a chapel. It's a gate. The final toll is coming. I know it. The ringer stands beside me, his faceless head bowing as if in prayer. He presses the rope into my hands. And God forgive me, I pull. The 5th toll. The village goes silent. The shadows vanish. The eyeless congregation kneels as one. And then, a whisper in the dark. It is done. When I open my eyes, I am no longer in the tower. I am at the altar. The pews are empty. The bell rope hangs still. But my hands are blackened, raw, burned by the rope. And I know, when midnight comes, the bell will ring again. Because now, I am the ringer.
Epilogue, the bell that never stops. I left the village at dawn. Or at least, I thought I did. The road stretched for miles, the trees thinning into a gray, endless horizon. But no matter how far I walked, I could still hear it. The bell. One toll, then another. Slow, relentless. It wasn't coming from the chapel anymore. It was everywhere. in the hum of the wind, in the groan of the earth, in the hollow space between my own heartbeats. I reached the next town by dusk. People laughed here. Children played in the streets. For a fleeting moment, I almost believed I had escaped. And then, as the church bell struck noon, I heard it, the other sound, a tone buried beneath the chime, low and heavy, like a shadow hiding in the music. No one else noticed, but I did. That night, I stayed in the inn above the square. I prayed, truly prayed, that it was only my mind unraveling. But then, around midnight, a single toll rolled through the air, and a man in the room next to mine screamed. They found him at dawn, kneeling by his bed, lips blue, a faint mark on his chest in the shape of a bell. The villagers called it a tragedy. I called it what it was. The curse had followed me. No, not followed. It had always been here. I understand now. The chapel was never the origin. It was only the first door. The bell rings not for one village, not for one priest. It rings for everyone. And tonight, I will hear it again. You will, too. Because if you're listening to this, it's already started.